Hello, everyone. This is Thomas Pepin, NHL Talk. I'm Thomas Pepin, and let's talk about the NHL. Again, we're continuing the NHL expansion series that I'm working on. We've gone through failed franchises and whether or not the markets could succeed in a second or third attempt in some cases. And we've moved on to potential new markets. What I mentioned I was going to do today was to start by selecting some other markets because, well, as always, I do this on the spot, no prep work except for the subject. So to be able to determine which markets to take a look at, I need to actually do work. And if I'm not going to do it off the stream, then I have to do it on the stream. And so, as you'll see just in the subject, I've already decided for today, took the low-hanging fruit and went with a subject that I was for sure going to take a look at, which is Southern Ontario, Canada. As a potential expansion option. And so I don't need to determine what we're going to do today, but I should have a look at the rest, maybe. See, I'm kind of torn on this because it's either I do it just before the stream starts, if I have like 5 minutes to do it, but I don't know if that's enough time to properly select franchises. So what I think I'll do is to go through a bunch of options now before getting into the one that we're going to be talking about today, which is Southern Ontario or the GTA. So we'll start with that. So since I always start off with doing all the data gathering and all that, it's not really going to be much different. It's just adding more to today's process than normal, but it should be relatively quick to select markets because, well, I have things bookmarked and I don't think it's going to be too complicated. Now, to get, to choose the best markets, I mean, maybe I should spend more time, but I think it should be pretty straightforward and obvious, but we'll see. So anyways, so that's the plan. We're going to start by picking some other markets other than the two that we've already started with, which are the two that people talk most about, excluding Atlanta, which we've already spoken about, which are/were Houston, which we did yesterday, and then the GTA or Toronto, whatever you want to call it, which we're going to do today. So we'll have a look and figure out some other markets. So just give me a moment to pull things up here. Now, already I think what I'm going to start off with is, since we're on the subject of Canada, see if there's any additional markets in Canada, which the first most obvious thought outside of Toronto would be Montreal, and then from there we're going to consider some other spots. So just a sec to pull up a spreadsheet, so we're good to go. We'll write down we'll just put it as GTA because it's all the same. Now, so just before we move on and start looking at some other options here, I don't want to just leave it as one potential team in the GTA because is that all that it could support? It's a good question. So I think that's a good question to answer. So what we'll do is pull up some American data because that's where we've got multiple teams in a similar region. So, man, yeah, so there's a lot of layers to this. Let's go Toronto. And what I want to see is, so in the States, we were kind of trying to target ballpark 200 miles between teams. Now, it's not always going to be the case, but for smaller markets, it makes sense to have some sort of sizable gap between the places. And already, I mean, everything's within 200 miles in Canada here. So let's do Toronto to Ottawa. 450, which is what, 300 miles? I'm not good at these kind of things. So 280. So that's about the right space between the markets. And on top of it, to be honest, there's not really much between. Like, I mean, if you're Canadian and you live in Ontario, for you, you'll say, oh, well, there's, Kingston and whatever. Brockville's not too small. But, I mean, we're talking about markets to potentially support a team, so it's not the same, and you're not going to put a team in Kingston, I think is a simple way to say it. So, so the distance is good. Now, what was it for? So I'm going to check the distance between the spots in New York. So that's UBS Arena. And we want is MSG going to just show up like that? Yes. MSG, and then we want New Jersey Devils. Prudential. Okay, so 38:29. Wait, what? Oh, minutes. Sorry. 20 and 14. Or, well, 18, 19, 14. So, very close. What's miles again? So, the furthest is, let's say, 19 miles, 30 kilometers. What do we have? 30 kilometers. To Oakville. Where's the kilometers? 38. What? That doesn't make sense. 50. Or wait, sorry, 30. Yeah, 38. So the distance between Toronto and Oakville is kind of the same distance between MSG and Prudential Center. I think that was it, right? MSG to... Let's just make sure of that. MSG Prudential. Or was it the opposite? So it's the opposite, yeah. So MSG to UBS Arena is about 20 miles, which is about 30 kilometers. And then that would be approximately Toronto to Oakville. So the furthest distance of the teams in the New York kind of area would be about this in the GTA. So would you want a team in Oakville? I mean, it doesn't make sense. Mississauga makes a lot of sense. Hamilton's an option. Getting towards St. Catharines and Niagara Falls doesn't really make much sense. In theory, Kitchener, London are options, but you got to keep in mind about travel distance and population basis to support the team. So, for example, London to Kitchener. Yeah, I mean, you're really stretching to get some population bases if you decide to go with a team in London. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to get into these smaller teams. Kitchener, I mean, you're close enough travel distance to the GTA. You're close to Hamilton, close to Mississauga, Toronto, Guelph. So in theory, it could work, but London doesn't look so good. Now, that being said, I mean, let's see if we can get the data here for the London Knights. Jeez, so they're like sold out every season. Getting about, 9,000, which is pretty stellar attendance. So this one's tough here. What's Toronto's attendance? So basically sold out every season. So yeah, I mean, I think it's obvious that it could support a team. Or I should say, because, that's what we're going to be talking about today, but could it support two teams? So I think a good way for us to consider this idea is comparing hockey registration as a proxy for fan base, just to see kind of what we're working with here. So let's see. See, the problem is I don't want to get too much into this because then we're starting to do a different market. But I need to at least be able to, have an idea if it makes sense. New Jersey is 18,267 plus. Where's New York? Is it all one state for New York? Where is it? Where is it? There we go. 46410 plus. And then Islanders are still part of New York, right? Well, New York Islanders, but yeah, that's not considered. It's still the same state. Okay, so 64,677 for. I mean, we're also including northern New York, which would be connected to Buffalo, but whatever. Let's overestimate for the region and contrast that with Ontario's numbers. Come on. So this is too small. Player registrations. Northwestern, no. Ontario hockey. And it's not. So this is good, actually, because now we're getting essentially to GTA. So we're not doing Northern Ontario. We're not doing Eastern Ontario, which would be Ottawa way. And then it's essentially the whole Southern Ontario, which is exactly what we want. So that is 175,772. So contrast that with 64,677. It's almost 3 times. So if just from a fan base perspective, in theory, using hockey registrations as a proxy for fan base or potential fan base, in theory, Toronto or Southern Ontario could support 3 times the amount of New Jersey and New York combined. Now, there's a whole bunch of other factors, like this is where we're looking at or considering things like, which we're not doing in this series, but other things like local industry in like the business market, ownership groups, arenas in existence, things like that. So, and also there's the exchange rate. So the US dollar is noticeably higher. I mean, at this point, it's not crazy high versus the Canadian dollar, but there's a difference there. There's just more money in the States. It's an obvious thing. So that's where this is not a perfect way to compare, but in theory, it also makes sense because I mean, as a Canadian who's lived a large portion of my life in Southern Ontario, I know that, I mean, I haven't lived in the U.S., but I would argue it's nearly certain that there's way more hockey fans in Southern Ontario than in New York and New Jersey combined. Whether or not that's true, that's a different thing. but just intuitively it makes sense, and based on hockey registrations, it seems kind of obvious. So, anyways, like I said, so in theory, using hockey registrations as a proxy for fan base, in theory, the GTA could essentially support, three times the three teams in the New York area. And again, remember, we're overstating the fan base because this is all of New York, and there's also Buffalo. So we're really, so that's where three times the amount seems accurate, factoring that in. So if that's the case, then Southern Ontario could, in theory, support three times the three teams in the New York sort of area, which means 9 total teams. Now, because of all the other factors, I would say that that's definitely not correct. But at the very least, it seems obvious that there could be a second team in Southern Ontario. Could there be a third team? Based on this, the answer is yes. Should there be a third team? I don't know about that. So we have, I thought I bookmarked this, but I guess I didn't. So so the population of Southern Ontario, is it including? Maybe I don't want that, because this is saying, yeah, it is including Ottawa, and I wouldn't call Ottawa Southern Ontario. All right, then we will use metropolitan area. What does that include? So it goes as far north as King. I don't know if that's accurate. Because, I mean, yeah, the GTA, that's what it's called. That's not what I'm arguing. I'm just arguing using this as a region for fan base. And so, where's Hamilton here? So, geez. What is the smallest U.S. market for a team? Or I guess another way I could do is contrast the smallest Canadian market. That's probably more representative. So Winnipeg, comparing Winnipeg to Hamilton. So if there would be 3 teams in Southern Ontario, the most logical places would be another one in the GTA. My argument would be in Mississauga. The reason being is it's close to the airport. Thankfully, I know these things, so I can just do this off the top of my head. I don't have to research it. But yeah, for me, the most obvious location would be Mississauga. And then, so if you would do that, then you'd have Hamilton would be another good option. And like I said, so Kitchener, Cambridge, Waterloo, you could do. I don't know if I like that because you're starting to get to a bit of a distance. And Hamilton has an airport. It's not one of the most popular airports, but it's, functional. Uh, let's see. Where does Hamilton sit? Because I think it's not horrible. So it sits 18th. And what is the exact difference? So 250 passengers, 250,000. Double London, double Waterloo is just, I don't think Kitchener has something. No. So then, and I mean, it doesn't matter if it's popular. I'm just thinking about the suitability to bring in flights. Not that it really matters, but it's kind of just, it's another way to think about the distances between locations in southern Ontario. So, yeah, and there's nothing really else. Well, I didn't realize Thunder Bay has such high amount. So, I mean, based on this, it kind of makes sense, Hamilton, if there would be a third one. So, like we've established, 3 potential teams in Southern Ontario is not that crazy. Contrasting that with, like I said, hockey registration as a proxy for fan base, with New York and New Jersey. So the next thing I wanted to figure out is population bases to contrast. Now, we know that Toronto's not going to be anything like New York. Oh, well, this is great. So it actually includes all of it. So all of New York, New Jersey. So it's going to be everything. It includes Connecticut? And is that all of PA or is that... No. So, and they do have Philadelphia as separate. Okay, so then it really should be close proximity to... Well, let's see if there's an image of the map. Cool, this is what I want. Okay, so Manhattan is there. So it is going pretty far out. Does it say the distance? Square miles isn't going to help me. Oh, maybe it can. So 3,450, and then let's see if we can get the square miles of the GTA. So 7,000. So the GTA is double the size, in terms of space, land area. So then that is kind of fair, I think, to contrast the two. So, so you've got about 6 point something million in the GTA, and then in the New York area, it's about 19.7. So it's 3 times the size for population. It's a third of the potential fan base, just following the logic that I mentioned before. So if it's three times the size, but it's 1/3 the size fan base, then the markets, you could argue, should be equal ability to support teams. So that's what I'm going to argue, and I think that's a really good way to answer the question. So we are going to consider 2 teams in Southern Ontario. So that answers that question. So we're going to do GTA, and I think what makes the most sense, so we'll actually label them, whether or not it's going to be correct or what we should do. You know what? Let's just check something. What options do we have? We have Scotiabank. So Hamilton could already support a team. So then I think that answers the question. And then, the Coliseum, I guess. But I don't like that idea. It's really dated, I believe. That's the old... What was it called? Toronto Gardens or something? Actually, let's pull it up just out of interest. Does it say... Coliseum, I guess. Anyways, so I guess what you could do, actually you could even do it in London. So what I was thinking is temporary arena for a third team. So all of them are kind of good enough if you need to support a team very quickly. So Hamilton's the only one that really is suited to support a team. So we'll do Mississauga and Hamilton. And we are going to do 2. I think it's been decided here. Now, what I will do is explain today we'll do Mississauga, I guess, and then tomorrow we'll do Hamilton. And I'll re-explain tomorrow about Hamilton, the justification to consider a third team. So, anyways, so you'll know now if you're watching, but for anybody who doesn't, we'll re-explain that, because it is a separate discussion anyways. So, cool. So we've answered that question. Now, since we're on the subject already, what about more teams in New York? So what I want to know is, or in the region at least, do they have good enough attendance to justify an additional team. So all three would need to have good attendance to be able to justify a fourth team in the region. So we want Islanders, Rangers, and New Jersey Devils. So Islanders, not consistent enough, because you can't, like, I know they're in a new arena and so far it's great, but you can't have this much fluctuation. So they're not a good start. The Rangers, I'm sure, they're not even still at full capacity, which is pretty crazy because they should be. And then New Jersey, actually a lot better than I was expecting, but still not to capacity. So what I would argue is that's a clear indication that no other team should be in New York, that region at least at this point. In the future, I would say probably they could support a team, but not right now. So that very quickly answers that question. See, it's tempting to just stop there and then work on one of them, but when am I ever going to get to work on other ones? Montreal. So if Quebec City had a team, which I said they should, okay, let's take a look at Canadians' attendance. Because the thing about these Canadian markets is they can support more teams. Like, look, they're at capacity every single season, no matter how bad they are. There's gotta be. And then what's the distance again? I think we said that it was plenty of distance between Montreal and Quebec. Montreal and Quebec City. And that is 255, 150. So it is starting to get a bit close, but yeah. Okay, so Quebec City gets a team. I think this is a good way to do this. So Quebec City, the populations of the metropolitan area is about 840,000 people. And so if Quebec City can support a team on that, Montreal's at 4 million. So Montreal, we're going to consider a second team in Montreal. Okay, so that answers that question. Canucks. This one feels like this one's right on the line here. I don't feel like Vancouver can support a second team, but we'll have a look. And does Victoria? It is a different region, so maybe Victoria. And I think their airport is decent too. So we were looking at Vancouver and Canucks. Oops. Attendance. Now they have to be, in my opinion, at capacity, and they are. So Man, we got a lot of potential Canadian teams. So let's say uh, Vancouver number 2/Victoria. Cool. So it looks like this series is going to be longer than anticipated. I had a feeling this would be the case. I didn't think Canada would be so promising, which is odd because I'm Canadian and I know that we have a lot of hockey fans, but the more that I've seen all the US markets that are able to support teams, the more I'm thinking all these Canadian markets should have second teams or first teams or whatever. So, uh, anyways, so we've got that, and we're really, really scraping the barrel to consider other spots. Now, my assumption is Ottawa can't fill to capacity. Uh, we'll check Calgary, Edmonton, Southern Ontario. We've got two teams we're considering already, so we're not going to go into a fourth team. I think that's stretching it. Halifax is another interesting one, so we'll briefly take a look at that. Yeah, and so getting lower down on the list, I think, is a bad idea. Because as we saw, Winnipeg is kind of the bottom, the lowest, smallest market that a Canadian team can support. So I wouldn't really like Halifax is even a stretch, but we'll consider it briefly in this planning that we're doing here. So you know what? Let's just make this stream gathering the other potential markets. We won't get into Mississauga. We'll just do completely gathering things because, to be honest, otherwise this stream's, I mean, we're almost at an hour already and it would start to get a bit crazy. So that's what we'll do. We'll just do selecting other cities for today's stream. So as like because this is on the spot, I don't know till I start working on things, and I mean this would be a 4-hour stream if I go through selecting cities and then do the second Toronto team. So anyways, we were going to check and one thing while I'm on the subject, I am gonna just change the title of the stream. So I'm nearly done. Just bear with me a couple more seconds. Should at least say the title. So for everybody that's just tuning in, I've had a change of heart, and I'm just gathering. Instead of doing the second Toronto team, I'm actually going to be selecting all the markets that I'm going to do for the rest of the series, because otherwise I'm going to be getting into a stream of like 4 or 5 hours if I'm gathering those and then taking a look at the GTA. So I've changed the title at least. I'm just in the process of changing the description here. And so if you are tuned in and you're interested in, as I'm selecting the other options that we're going to take a look at, then you can stay tuned in. But yeah, so just a moment to finish adjusting or editing the description here, and then we'll continue. So in today's live stream, I'll be briefly evaluating other potential markets to select. That's good enough as a description for now. Okay, so just a sec to switch back. I'll re-edit that description once I'm done, but it's good enough for now. So we've just finished considering, so we're going to do 2 teams in Southern Ontario, Mississauga and Hamilton, a second team in Montreal, a second team in Vancouver or Victoria. So next we're going to just consider Calgary and Edmonton, because what we've seen here is... Oh, and did we look at Ottawa? I should look at Ottawa. But I already had a feeling that they wouldn't be able to support another team. But so we know that the smallest market, at least it appears to be that the smallest market that can support a team in Canada is Winnipeg. Going below that, we're still going to briefly consider Halifax to add to the list. But outside of that, it doesn't make sense for any of the rest. Like, unfortunately for Saskatchewan and everywhere else, I don't see how it could happen, because if Winnipeg is not even that strong, it's not a good idea to consider all the rest of the places. So in order for Ottawa to be an option, the attendance has to be essentially at capacity, which it is absolutely not. So Ottawa is not a good option. Edmonton is, but I was going to say, when did McDavid come in? But they were at capacity even before. So Edmonton number 2, I just would not expect for that to work. Edmonton is not double the size of Winnipeg. We're going to say no, although it's close, because they're at capacity every season. So maybe in the future, Edmonton would not be a crazy option. Oh, hi, Fishy Wishy Edits. I've seen you. Well, you've seen that I've liked your comments and stuff, so appreciate your interactions and stuff with me. Nice to see you. So, anyways, yeah, Edmonton maybe in the future, but doesn't look like it. Calgary looks like same sort of story. I just don't think it's big enough, and because Calgary's not. I mean, you would want double the size of Winnipeg, I think, and it's not. So, really, that's kind of. I think that's going to be it for Canadian teams, except we just want to briefly consider Halifax. But I think it's already a no, but we'll see. One sec. Halifax. I think it's Mooseheads. Yeah, they're not even getting to capacity. So we'll leave it there. I mean, some people have made the comment about Halifax. I just don't think it's a good idea. So we've got 4 Canadian markets that we're considering. So that's cool. And now we're going to continue on with U.S. markets. So this is going to be easier to navigate if we use this website. So already the one I know for sure I want to take a look at is a Wisconsin team. The most populous city in Wisconsin, it's not Madison. What's the one there? Ah, jeez. Not bad that Milwaukee, that's what it was. So Milwaukee is 100% one we're looking at. I don't know how to spell it well enough, so let's copy and paste. Cool. So that one's absolutely one we're considering. Next up, so Minnesota is outstanding for hockey. The Minnesota Wild are doing great now, which is promising, but the fact that they went away makes me concerned about their ability to support a second team. So did I get that right again? So we got Minneapolis. Yeah, you're really stretching to pull a team out of that. Where is it? Because if it's far enough away, then maybe, but I have a feeling it's going to be too close. Oh, it's like right beside. So really there's no other options in Minnesota. Yeah. So Minnesota is maxed out. Massachusetts is an interesting one. Now this is where I think we'll get rid of this now. Boston, 4 4.9 million. 4.9 million. Actually, yeah, we do need that still pulled up. Just to contrast. Oh, wrong one. Because if we're saying three in 6 million, where was it? Boston 2 in 5 million. Yeah. What was the registration at? So I do need that still. Whoops. Wrong one. So we're going to essentially need hockey registration at a rate that we can argue can support a team. So if we're saying that Southern Ontario is, what is that, about 60,000 registrations per team, again as a proxy for fan base, then I mean there's no state with that many registrations. So to have a second team in Massachusetts, man, the only way you could justify it is if the Bruins are at capacity all the time. So attendance, which they have been for a stretch. What is that? Because if TD Guardians, I think it's still called Garden. Capacity for hockey is 17,850. Huh. So unless that, it must have just changed. 17,8. Well, it's not telling us about it. So we've already talked about Hartford. I would say we're really stretching for Boston to get another team. So we'll say no to Boston. Or, well, I mean, I should say whatever the region. New York, we've already said that they've maxed out. Michigan. How does Detroit do? Because I don't think they fill every season, even though it's a big fan base. Yeah. See, not good enough. So they should be at capacity even with bad teams, and that's not good enough. So I think in effect now what we've established is no U.S. markets that currently exist can support a second team in those markets. New York is even a stretch, but New York seems stable at least. So everything else has to be new markets sufficiently far away from a current market in order to have potential, with preference towards the more hockey mad states, I guess you could say. So we've got another team in LA. So what we'll do now is contrast for the most part, contrast the U.S. markets to the U.S. markets because they're most similar to each other. where in Canada, the Canadian markets were most similar to each other. Um, so we've established that New York region can support 3 teams, and that's probably the max. Los Angeles, Anaheim. So what is that amount? We'll use the census number divided by 3 is about 6 million population can support per team. So we'll use that as kind of a foundation to consider markets. Now, a bit of flexibility in there, but approximately that. So, Chicago. That's interesting. What's the registration like in Illinois? That is neat. So I think, again, a good judgment to figure out if Chicago could have a second team is if they're at capacity every season, which they have been, but when their team's not so good, the fan base is not so good, or the attendance at least. So I would argue a second team in Chicago is probably a stretch. It's not far off, but too far, even from just a brief look. So Chicago's a no. Dallas is fine as is. We don't want a second team there. Houston, we already have. We've already taken a look at that. Washington, they have a team. We know that the population base per team approximately is about 6.7 million. So no second team there. Philadelphia's got one. Atlanta, I mean, we already looked at. Population-wise, it makes sense. I just don't think they're going to fill the rink. So that's a no. Miami has the Panthers, so that's already a no. Phoenix, no. Boston, no. Riverside, San Bernardino, where was that? It was close to LA, right? Or am I confusing places? Yeah. So they've got 2 teams there already. In terms of traveling in to see the teams, it makes sense that San Bernardino would be LA or Anaheim, and so it kind of adds to that market. Which was 13 plus 4 is 20. So that's about the same as New York. So they're... Ooh, and they only have 2 teams there. Interesting. Now, what about... I know we've already looked at this stuff, but I need a reminder. It's not bad. And then LA's at capacity, right? But Anaheim's closer to San Bernardino. So it doesn't, to me, make sense. In theory, based on population, there could be a third team there. But I think it's not a good idea. I mean, if LA's at capacity every season, which I think they are, still not even. So, no, that's a no then. Now already we're getting into the population bases that are not quite good enough. So San Francisco, we already have as a potential expansion. Seattle has a team. Minneapolis has a team. San Diego. Where is San Diego? So that's way, way south. San Diego to Anaheim. We're starting to get a bit close. No, I don't think San Diego can do it. Tampa already has a team. Denver has a team. Baltimore. Baltimore to Washington, D.C. That's getting close. Washington Capitals attendance. Man, they're at capacity every season. For a while now, almost 20 years. Baltimore. See, the region, though, doesn't have enough population. St. Louis has a team. Denver has a team. See, this is where we're at the... Actually, that's a good question. NHL attendance. So let's have a look at the non-COVID seasons. NHL attendance 2018-19. So Chicago, Montreal, Philly, Toronto, Detroit, Tampa, Minnesota, Pittsburgh. Islanders, Panthers, Coyotes, Hurricanes. Yikes. What is it for the Hurricanes? Charlotte. Where was St. Louis? Man, we're really scraping. So Baltimore, I mean, is borderline, but it's just too close to Washington. Nothing else close, eh? Washington's 11th valuation. Man, it seems like the market could support a second team. That one's a close one. It's a bit of a stretch. Kansas City, Columbus. Tampa Bay, where's Florida? Right at the bottom. So I think what we'll do is, I'll just make a note for myself here. And we'll just go through in one stream some of the other ones that are where we're getting into a bit of a stretch of them being able to work, but where they're not so crazy to consider. So like I was saying with Baltimore, Orlando is another thing maybe. San Antonio. Okay, but before I move on, because I think that's probably about it. Really, there's no other good markets in the States. The only other good one right now is Houston. Atlanta is already a no. Phoenix is struggling. San Bernardino, I think it's not quite there. Actually, you know what? Let's just bookmark the ones that are maybes. So we'll make a what? So San Bernardino, maybe. San Francisco, we already did. San Diego's a maybe. So like I said, it's a no for now, but these are all ones that eventually could be maybes. Oh yeah, Chicago. We'll put that in a maybe as well. I'll put that at the top of the list. Houston, Washington, Philly, Atlanta. So that was it for there. Detroit, no. Tampa, Denver, Charlotte, Orlando. San Antonio was another one. Where's Portland? It's WA for Washington. Wait, Portland, Oregon. Whoops. That was a stupid. Portland. It's far enough away from everything. What's the registration like in Oregon? Not good at all. Yikes. So that's an absolute no. Jersey, Ohio, Texas, Colorado, Connecticut, Washington, Missouri, Virginia, Maryland, Arizona, Alaska. Anchorage. I mean, probably not, but it's a neat thought at least. What's the registration like? Huh, that's funny. I mean, it would be way, 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 way down the line, but yeah, I know for now. Where were we? Portland. No. Sacramento, we've already talked about. Austin. It's close to San Antonio. Did I bookmark San Antonio already? Yeah. LA, Cincinnati. No. Kansas City. No. Where's Indianapolis? Is it IN? Yeah, I think we're starting to get a bit close to Columbus. Oh yeah, Illinois. So okay, so Indiana. Not quite good enough. Cleveland, Nashville, San Jose, Virginia Beach, Providence. Because we kind of, there needs to be something really, really northeast. in my opinion. Yeah, and that's not quite where I'm thinking. So Maine has nothing. Burlington? What's the population of Burlington? Not nearly enough. New Hampshire. Where's Manchester? That's getting close to Boston. Maine, New Hampshire, Rhode Island's a no. Vermont already has a potential team. Nah. I think that's it. Delaware's a no. Let's get back up here. Portland's no. Sacramento, no. Well, I mean, it's already in the list, kind of. Austin, no. Cincinnati, no, 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 no. No, 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 no. What's Winnipeg's population? So that's kind of the minimum for the states would be 800,000, but that's like, I mean, the fan base isn't going to be that great. So what, like 1.6 million is kind of the max? Milwaukee, Oklahoma. Okay, so I think the last thing we'll have a look at is the attendances for AHL and ECHL, if there's some regions that stand out to be consistently good. So Cleveland, we already spoke of. Hershey, Pennsylvania. Maybe Pennsylvania. But I don't think that Pittsburgh and Philly are full all the time. Pittsburgh's a bit low. I mean, not bad, but Flyers still good, but not quite good enough, I don't think. Chicago's good. Providence. Coachella. Uh, 2018-19. San Diego. I have that on the list, I believe. Yeah. Man, Hershey's good. Ontario. Where's Ontario? Huh. So maybe they could support a team there. Did I add it to the list? Maybe I should. Oh, I did. Yeah, sorry, because it's under a different name. That's my bad. Inland Empire, I believe, is it, right? Yeah. Okay. Grand Rapids. Yeah. And then let's check out the ECHL, which I mean, it seems unlikely. Ohio. Fort Wayne, Indiana, I believe. 18, 19. Indiana? Fort Wayne's a no. Indianapolis, maybe? Maybe. But I think that's where we're going to end it. So we've got our list now. So really, in the end, it's mostly Canadian markets, which surprises me, but I thought there'd be more in the States. But everything else looks like a bit of a stretch. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's about it. So, in the end, just to summarize here, so we've got a potential second team in Chicago, San Bernardino, California, San Diego, California, Baltimore, Maryland, Orlando, Florida, San Antonio, Texas, and Indianapolis, Indiana. So we're going to look at all of those in one stream by itself, kind of as similarly briefly to today's, but in slightly more detail. And then otherwise for the ones we're actually doing a full analysis of will be Mississauga, so just these ones here on the left. Mississauga, Hamilton, Montreal, number 2, Vancouver, number 2, or Victoria, and Milwaukee. So we've got 5 more, plus the extra one where we kind of look at all those, ones that are not quite there but are still worth considering. I don't think there's anything else. Yeah. Because everything else has... Wait, one last thing. I just want to double check one thing here. Winnipeg was 800,000. 8 times 3 is 24. We stopped at... I think 24 would be about right. Because that ratio of 3 to 1 kind of really makes sense. I hope I don't forget to talk about that. So it's basically 2.4 million in the States is a reasonable size. So I guess maybe we can add Portland, but it's kind of a stretch. Sacramento we already talked about. all the rest have teams. Austin, no. Cincinnati, we kind of already talked of. Kansas City's a no. Columbus, no. Cleveland's already there. Nashville, San Jose, yeah. And then there's nothing else. So that's it. Cool. So different stream than I was expecting. But we're at an hour and a half, and if I was to try to add on anything else, I think it would have been getting into 3 hours or whatever. So one of the joys of doing this on the spot, but I don't think it's it's not a wasted effort, because kind of everybody's going to have seen my thought process in generating other options, and this needed to be done at some point, and I don't do unfortunately, maybe for you guys, I don't do any work outside of on streams. So so in this case, it kind of made sense to have it as its own stream. So I guess this is kind of a brief pause in the series, but it's still part of the same thing, because I need to at least do some sort of brief analysis to figure out my options. So that's it for today, I guess. We'll leave it there. So if you like the stream, which is kind of a weird stream, but I think you got to hear my logic behind things, which I'll discuss in greater detail once I do each of these streams individually. But it's kind of good, I think, for people to see the thought process, for one on the spot, to see me generating things, but also to see the actual whole justification rather than just seeing the end result, because I think it's good to see some of the thoughts behind it, which you would miss if I did some sort of scripted video of like 10 minutes or whatever. So anyways, but if you like the stuff, hit the like button, share with your friends, subscribe, turn on notifications. Otherwise, channel homepage has upcoming streams. Should be 3 p.m. Eastern daily, except for Sundays. Any comments, leave them in the comments. Suggestions, same thing. And tomorrow, what will I move on to tomorrow? Should I get into the... No, you know what I'll do tomorrow? Instead of going into the actual ones that I'm going to evaluate, I think it's best to kind of summarize what I just did in a short stream going over the potential future markets. So kind of condensing this stream into one stream and talking about all those other markets briefly. So that's what we'll do tomorrow, and then we'll finish with the actual evaluations for the rest of the markets for the series. So I think that's what we'll do then. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys tomorrow.